Okay, hi everybody to the Architecture Foundation. Thanks for having me, and for everybody who's tuning in to these bedtime stories. I'm really honoured and grateful to be asked to read from something that's inspired me in architecture and the built environment and in life generally. There'll be lots of different readings that different people have read over this period, so it's exciting to add to the collection. But the person I'm going to read from tonight is hugely influential globally, a great ecologist, environmentalist and thinker. I've been influenced by lots of people. My name's Blanche Cameron. I teach at the Bartlett School of Architecture and work in various aspects of University College London, UCL's teaching and sustainability activities, but I started out as a campaigner with the Covent Garden Community Association, inspired by an incredible activist architect, Jim Monaghan, and other people whom he campaigned with to save the centre of Covent Garden with back in the 60s and early 70s, and he was a huge influence on me, as was his wife Jane and their whole family. And since then I worked as a builder, I studied architecture, I studied art foundation, I did lots of different unrelated jobs that never seemed to connect up. And I went as a builder to the Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales in 1999, and just as a course was coming there, and we started the Graduate School of the Environment at CAT in 2000-2001, which is now a large postgrad school. Where you can learn about sustainable building and environmental approaches to how we live. I've also been hugely influenced by people like Dusty Gedge, Gary Grant, John Little and Fiona Crummy, who to me represent carers of our natural world, but people who also are working very hard to transform and change it. And the other people, I guess, who've influenced me hugely, I'm not reading from tonight, but who I hold on to for direction and thoughts and ideas are the students that I work with. And the students of the Bartlett worked with other schools across London and the UK last year to form Architecture Education Declares. So if you haven't come across that, architectureeducationdeclares.com has driven architecture schools around the country to rethink the way that we do education. So I teach environmental design at the Bartlett School of Architecture to all first years, which is a huge privilege because I learn a lot from them and I get to speak to them about things that I'm passionate about and that are needed in the world. So I think anyway, and lots of other people also think. So we also have this crisis in front of us. The UN has said we have a decade to make meaningful, radical change to the way that our world is designed, how we build cities or unbuild cities, how we grow or degrow our systems, and how we move from competition and inequality to respect, mutuality and care. So although I work in architecture, the themes that relate to this tonight, the book that I'm going to read from is called Oneness Versus the 1%, by this immensely influential ecologist, activist and environmental thinker, Vandana Shiva. Now, the first book that of hers that I came across was called Staying Alive, which was her first book in 1988. I didn't find it then. Maybe 10 years ago now. Staying Alive, Women, Ecology and Development, and I highly recommend that. But the book, one of her most recent works, so Oneness Versus the 1%, came out in 2018 on New Internationalist Publishers Limited. So around the time that the UN produced its report saying that we had 12 years left to make radical change before we saw sort of irreversible changes that we might not be able to come back from to do with climate and ecology breakdown. And it's a really, really, really good book. So I'm going to read from the preface, but I'll just give you a brief rundown about Vandana Shiva. She's a fascinating woman and an incredibly influential person. Vandana Shiva is a world-renowned environmental thinker and activist, a leader in the International Forum on Globalization and of the Slow Food Movement, director of Navdanya and of the Research Foundation for Science, Technology and Ecology, and a tireless crusader for farmers, peasants and women's rights. She's the author and editor of a score of influential books, among them Making Peace with the Earth, Soil Not Oil, Globalization's New Wars, Seed Sovereignty, Food Security, Women in the Vanguard, and Who Really Feeds the World. Shiva is the recipient of over 20 international awards, including the Right Livelihood Award, which is often considered an alternative Nobel Prize, and others. Jane Goodall wrote about her. All of us who care about the future of planet Earth must be grateful to Vandana Shiva. Her voice is powerful, and she's not afraid to tackle those corporate giants that are polluting, degrading, and ultimately destroying the natural world. And just before I start, I would say that the Bartlett School of Architecture also supports the Architecture Education Declares process, and late in 2019, in October, declared a climate and ecological emergency, and is moving in a radical direction towards changing how it teaches, designs and manages the school, and the way that we teach and what we teach as well. So in the spirit of that, I'm going to read this, the preface to this amazing text. What is it to live, to be alive? What is it to live well, to be well? What is knowledge and what is intelligence? What is ecology? What is economy? What is freedom? What is democracy? What is our future? We're compelled to return to these basic questions in our times of the possible extinction of our species, as the current dominant model of knowledge, of wealth creation and of representative democracy violates planetary boundaries, the rights of the diverse species that share this planet, as well as the human rights and freedoms of most people. These are times when the 1% controls the wealth and power to destroy our planet and our common lives, with no responsibility or accountability for their actions, because they've found clever ways to create illusions of the separation of humans from the earth and of the 1% from the rest of society, as if we share no common wealth and no common future. Being well and the experience of well-being are timeless, off the clock. Wealth means a state of well-being. The market has come between us and our well-being, severing us from our potential and our needs. The market has also allowed its own consolidation, accompanied by the consolidation of global power. In 2010, 388 billionaires controlled as much wealth as the bottom half of humanity. This number came down to 177 in 2011, to 159 in 2012, to 92 in 2013, 80 in 2014, and 62 in 2016. It shriveled to a mere 8 in 2017. By 2020, it seems there will be only one. In 2008, during the global economic crash, when people lost their homes and jobs, billionaires consolidated their ownership of industry across the world. Stock prices had bottomed out, and the wealthiest billionaires bought out the economy at bottom dollar prices. It was too convenient to be a matter of chance. This was the deployment of the money machine. The money machine is programmed to bulldoze, destroy, aggregate and accumulate, externalize and excavate. Like the cancer cell which does not know when to stop growing, convergences, mergers and concentration are the only logic the money machine understands. And just as the cancer cell ends up destroying the host organism, the money machine too will destroy the planet and our societies from which it draws its support. We must reclaim our intelligence and creativity to resist the money machine and create non-violent alternatives. We must reclaim the market from the money machine and our lives from billionaire dictators. We must reclaim our real freedoms and not be seduced by the false freedoms of free trade, corporate rule, algorithm-run democracy and consumerism. We must stand firm and reclaim the meaning of wealth and the conditions for being well. Will the end game for humanity be the domination of the one power of big money, or will we, in our oneness, as one earth community, one human community, shut down our operating system of domination and extermination to allow our potential for self-organisation and creativity to seed another future? The diversity of cultures and languages, and with them our imagination, is being lost. Social violence and disintegration have become the norm everywhere, as economic polarisation and inequalities deepen. Every society is facing a crisis of democracy, as big money hijacks the process of representative democracy, and elections are used to divide people through hate and fear. They divert the public consciousness from the real roots of their insecurity, thus preventing them from organising and rising to protect the planet, to rebuild their societies and to reclaim their economies and democracies. Humanity stands at a precipice. There is an uncertainty regarding our potential for future evolution. Ecologically, the uncertainty arises because every aspect of the dominant model of thinking and living is destroying the Earth's capacity to support our lives. The erosion and extinction of our species, the destruction of soils and water, and climate chaos are wreaking havoc on the conditions necessary to continue as members of the Earth community. The extractive model of economic development and growth, of corporate control, and the greed economy are not just destroying nature, they're destroying our humanity, which is the human capacity for solidarity, compassion, and the ability to take care of each other. Through the illusions and abstractions that the powerful have created and imposed on the rest of humanity, especially over the last 2 centuries, of the rise of fossil fuel-based industrialism and the mechanical reductionist mind, we are losing our capacity to not just sustain life ecologically, but also to sustain life socially as a community. Uprooting, dispossession, the creation of refugees is the shadow of the illusionary model of limitless growth on a planet with ecological limits, as well as of the exercise of limitless power by the powerful through constructed grids of categories and narratives. But going off the precipice towards extinction is not inevitable. We can choose to walk away from the mechanistic world of invented constructions and free ourselves from the forces and paradigms that have brought us to it. We can realise that we are members of the Earth community and that the Earth has an amazing capacity and potential to rejuvenate and renew. And since we're part of the Earth, not separate from her, we share that capacity and potential. A consciousness of our power to be the change we want to see, as Gandhi said, forms the basis for cultivating hope, love, and compassion in these times of despair, fear, and hate. Within the crises that have brought us to the precipice lie the seeds of hope and freedom, the seeds to renew our humanity and our Earth citizenship. The crisis of survival that we face today is a result of the domination of an extractive economy imposed by artificial separations constructed by the mechanical mind and the false assumption that greed is a virtue to be rewarded by society. In an interview in May 2017, Stephen Hawking said that humanity faces a survival crisis that is so severe that in the next 100 years, either humanity will be extinct or we will have to escape from the Earth and colonise other planets. This idea of violating planetary limits for the next conquest, the next escape, only furthers the illusionary idea of linear human progress, bereft of oneness with the Earth and the recognition that this is our home, the only one we have, and that the crisis we find ourselves in is in fact a consequence of the colonialisation of the Earth, the colonisation of the Earth, and of diverse cultures, and of the absence of accountability for the destruction caused by colonisation. Escape is what led to colonisation in the past, and the same logic of mastery and conquest is being applied now to colonise other planets. Cecil Rhodes, who colonised Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, stated frankly, "We must find new lands from which we can easily obtain raw materials and at the same time exploit cheap slave labour that is available from the natives of the colonies. The colonies would also provide a dumping ground for the surplus goods produced in our factories. This is what the economy of the 1% is modelled on. The tools of extraction and the colonies might change, but the methods of colonisation remain unchanged. Grab and steal what belongs to others, make it your own property, collect rents from the original owners, and convert the displaced into cheap slave labour to provide raw material, as well as to become the market for your industrial products. This form of colonisation of nature and people, however, is reaching its limits now. When there is no need for slaves, no need for exploited workers, who will buy the junk that the 1% has to offer? Junk food and junk clothing, junk communications and junk media. When the earth is exploited and polluted, rupturing planetary limits, and when her life support systems are destroyed, there will be no production, no survival. But there are options beyond colonisation, beyond extinction. There is a third option, that of staying alive, by caring for the earth and for each other, rejuvenating the planet and our common humanity. Only as one earth community and one humanity, united in our diversities, can we hold ourselves together, step away from the precipice and escape the destructive, ecocidal, genocidal rule of the 1%. We can turn around and walk to our freedom, to live free, think free, breathe free, eat free. This book is an expression of hope, rooted in oneness, the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth family. It is based on the hope that proceeds from our potential to transcend separation and division, to think, act and live as one humanity on one planet, with full consciousness of our interconnectedness, as well as our responsibility to participate actively, every day, every moment of our lives, to protect and rejuvenate the natural and social web of life. His Holiness the Karmapa Ogyen Trinley Dorje has called it compassionate courage, the courage to act from compassion. We have created freedom and liberation movements before. We've decolonised our minds and our cultures from the stains and chains of imperialism and shed the artificially constructed but naturalised categories of race, gender, class and colour. We can, through our creativity and imagination, through our solidarity and interconnectedness, create a planetary freedom movement through which we break free of the chains and walls constructed by the illusions of the mechanical mind, the money machine, and the delusion of democracy. We can reclaim and create real knowledge through real intelligence. We can reclaim and create real wealth with nature through our creativity. And we can sow the seeds of real freedom and earth democracy. Now has always been our time. This is the resurgence of the real. The real is our oneness and non-separability. The real is our lived and living intelligence. The real is our self-organisation, our creativity, our freedom. The real is our potential to sow the seeds of diversity, of hope, of compassion, of interconnectedness, of our common future. Okay, that's thank you Vandana Shiva, also with Kartiki Shiva. And that's my reading for this evening. So I hope you enjoyed it. Biodiversity is life. Nature, human nature, we're all part of the same thing. So lots of love to you all. Okay, see you somewhere. Bye.